Hi, I'm Cryss, and welcome to episode 9 of the Crochet Cryss podcast. My sister Lisa and I own the yarn store A Knit Sheep in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, and this is the space where I talk about all my crochet things. And I wanted to talk to you all today because I realized that I kind of just jumped right into this whole crochet podcast thing without really properly introducing myself and letting you all know who I am and what I'm about. And if it's not too late for some of you, I'm hoping to have the opportunity to do that today. So first, just a little bit about my background as a crocheter. Obviously, like a lot of people, I learned how to crochet when I was a little kid. My grandmother taught me, and the first thing I made was, well, I didn't make a pillow. I made a selection of 8 granny squares that my grandmother then turned into a pillow that matched the blanket she made. And my pillow didn't really make the cut. I have no idea what happened to it over the years, but we still have my grandmother's blanket, and we actually have some of it. We took some of the squares and we have them displayed in our store, A Knit Sheep. And I love walking into my store every day and seeing that little piece of my grandmother there. So I crocheted for a while up until high school. And in high school, college, kind of drifted away from crochet. And I started crocheting again when Lisa actually started teaching herself how to knit because, I saw her making things and it just struck me one day. It's like, wait a minute, I used to make things. What happened? And I started crocheting again with what I call donor yarn, which is I was just getting yarn given to me by, various people who had some, which means it was just whatever. It was just a mishmash of whatever happened to be on hand. But I finally decided, after spending a ridiculous amount of time making scarves, that I wanted to try to make garments. And the first garment I ever attempted was from a book called The Crochet Closet by Lisa Gentry. And I made this jacket. The jacket, first of all, I used absolutely hideous yarn. It was this weird, really berry pink color that was not cute, and it was not a color that I actually wanted to wear. But it's what I had because it was like the big pound skein, so I knew I would have enough to make the jacket. And it didn't fit. Something was funky up in the shoulders and the underarms over here, and I never actually wore it. But even when I got to the point where I realized I wasn't going to be able to wear it, I kept making it, and I assembled the whole thing. I put on the buttons, I did the belt loops, the collar, and I made the entire jacket just because I was doing this to learn how to make a garment. So I wanted to make a garment, and I wanted to learn all the lessons that I could from making that thing. Oh, I should mention to you all, I'm in my backyard. I have set up what I'm calling the cabana. So Lisa and I used to sell yarn from a tent at craft fairs, and I actually just set up our tent in the backyard. I've got some like sheer curtains hanging from it. I've got a little sofa out here, and I'm making the most of my staycation because the store is closed for 3 weeks, and I've made myself a nice comfortable outdoor space so that I can maximize my staycation enjoyment. I highly recommend you do the same, whether it's a little inflatable wading pool or just a nice lounge chair under a tree. Make the most of your outdoor space. Do whatever you can to make your days off from work or from school enjoyable. Just wanted to explain my change of location. So I made that jacket, and like I said, it came out it was bad. It was really bad. But I felt more encouraged than discouraged because when I finished it, when I looked at it, I was like, holy cow, I made a jacket. So I started making just like, I don't remember when I made my first sweater, but I started making very simple things, so like vest and simple tops, tank tops and things like that, and eventually worked my way up to a sweater. And I made garments. I've been making garments, I guess, for more than 10 years now. And I realized that's like the thing I want to do as a crocheter. I want to be making garments. I'm personally, I had nothing against amigurumi, and I think people who do it are like some of the most technically proficient crocheters you'll find. But I'm like, even if I make a cute little thing, like I make a little what's-it, what am I going to do with it afterwards? So I have to be honest and say, as much as I enjoy seeing other people's amigurumi is never going to be my thing. I can make accessories. I have made a bazillion accessories. I have made scarves. I have made cowls. I've made shawls. I've made hats. I've made fingerless mitts and whatever the heck else. But that's not what I want to do either. I want not only the challenge, but the enjoyment that comes from making a garment, because once I've completed it, wearing the thing that I've made is kind of like my reward for all of the work that I've put into it. So I'm very specifically interested in just making crochet clothes. What I wanted to talk about, though, is really what my plans are for my podcast, because I feel like I've been kind of helter-skelter, just like I have been all over the place, and I haven't really defined a focus for my YouTube channel. And I don't know, I feel like maybe people don't know what to expect when they come here. So I will tell you what it's not going to be. And it's not going to be the FO show. It's not going to be the space where every single week I have a finished object or like a bazillion works in progress to show. I tend to be a monogamous crocheter for, like, I would say 90% of the time. I'm a monogamous crocheter. I work on one project. You all saw me working on that sweater for like 2 months because it was the only thing I was working on. I just don't like to divide my focus. I feel like the more things I try to work on at the same time, the less likely I am to finish any one thing. So it's going to be a slow pace for me in terms of actually making things, because making things takes time. So I know, I mean, when I watch other people's podcasts, I enjoy seeing their finished objects. I enjoy seeing the things that they make, but I don't know. I just, honestly, I feel like I have things in like that have to do with crochet and making that I want to talk about that aren't just, you know, here's what I made today, or here's what I made this week, or here's my latest whatever. And I'm hoping that, you know, this will be a welcoming space for me to do that. I just want to let you know, if a bug flies by, you will see me do a full-on freak out. I hate bugs. So I'm just warning, because I'm seeing things flitting around. So I'm just warning you now, you're going to see the whole, okay. But yeah, so I want to talk about making and the process, the art and the craft of making, as much as I want to talk about what I make. And so that's what I'll be doing. I didn't film last week because, I don't know, I felt like I was trying to force a fit. I was trying to figure out how to make like each week's podcast the thing I think other people want to see, based on watching other crochet podcasts that are, you know, very popular. And I realized that that's not, it was this conflict for me between, you know, what I think people want to see and what I actually want to do. And I ended up getting so frustrated by it, and, you know, with some other things going on last week, that I ended up not filming. And I realized that above all is the outcome that I want to avoid. Just not making a podcast each week, not sitting here and talking about this thing that I enjoy talking about, which is that's a very lofty term to apply to it, but I will call it my maker life. And I will give you a very concrete example of how I've been trying to make my podcast what I think other people want to see. I am a sweary beast. I swear all the time. But I have been making a very concerted effort to not swear in my podcast, because I'm like, oh, what if people are offended? Or what if people don't want to watch because I swear? Oh, fucking well. If profanity is a thing that turns you off, like I've seen like on book reviews, people say, oh, the story was good, but oh, there was so much profanity. And I'm like, I read books and I don't even notice the profanity half the time. I don't just swear. I use what I call casual profanity, meaning I don't just swear when I'm like angry about something. So for instance, if I just had like a really good meal, I'll be like, oh my God, that was such a fucking good meal. I say things like that all the time. So you might be thinking, well, gosh, how much swearing could there be in a crochet podcast? Left to me, a lot. I just have to be honest about that. So I just wanted to warn you that going forward, there's gonna be swearing, because I'm not going to like try to edit myself to, you know, make other people happy. So just so you know, that's a thing. So I wanted to just talk about my general, like, my crochet goals and my maker goals and the things that I'm hoping to do going forward, because those things are going to be the focus of my conversation. So it's not going to be just, and here's what I made, and here's the latest pattern I downloaded, and here's what I like, and here's, you know, there'll probably be quite a bit of yarn talk, but just because I'm currently exploring yarn, because that's another thing I should tell you all. You know what, I sat down here with no plan, and I'm realizing that was a terrible idea. So I will try to, you know, in the description, give a clearer idea of what I end up talking about, because right now I don't know. I have mostly been a craft store yarn user. Excuse me for a moment. And I still have no problems with craft store yarn, and especially if you're making garments, it's very economical. I made a dress once, and I challenged myself to make the dress as cheaply as possible, and I will try to post a picture of this dress on my Instagram, which I'm not really using, but I plan to. It's at Crochet Cryss, Cryss spelled Cryss. But I challenged myself to make this dress as cheaply as possible. So I actually got the yarn for it from AC Moore, because they have a $1 yarn bin. It's small skeins, but everything in there is $1. And then I had the nerve to have a fucking coupon on top of that, so I got 25% off my $1 yarn. So I bought my skeins of yarn for 75 cents each, and I made a fucking dress out of that. And I wore that dress to someone's wedding, and I got a ton of compliments on it. So you will not hear me bad mouthing craft store yarn, even though I happen to own a yarn store. Sometimes, you know, your primary concern is your budget, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is most people's reality. I don't think most of the people who are going to be watching this are people for whom money is no object. So that said, I have this opportunity now to learn about other kinds of fibers, and to experience hand-dyed yarn, and to explore yarn in a way that I hadn't even thought about doing before. Honestly, I didn't even know what was out there. So that's one of the things you're going to see me learning about, is all the different options there are for me to make things with, all the different yarns there are out there. So that's another thing that you'll probably see quite a bit of me talking about. Oh, I'm using this yarn for the first time. I'm using alpaca for the first time, because I've never used that. I've only had the store for 8 months, I think we're up to now, and I still haven't used any of the alpaca. So I personally have never used alpaca yarn. I'm still learning, and that's really what I want to convey with my podcast, that I'm still learning. I'm still learning about crochet. I'm still learning about making. I'm still learning about yarn. And I'm not putting myself forward as any kind of expert. I'm just I'm just figuring things out as I go along, and hopefully, you know, as I make my mistakes and as I stumble, you'll see that and maybe take something away from it and avoid some of those mistakes as you make, you know, your own mistakes. So that's what my channel is really going to be. It's going to be me just trying to make things up as I go along and figure things out along the way. I don't have a roadmap. I don't have a plan. I don't have a strategy. So this is going to be kind of a mess, but it'll be my mess. So I'm fine with that. I do have a list here of what I'm calling my crochet goals, and I figured I would just spend a few minutes. I'm not going to go into this in depth. Another thing I intend to do is develop my blog, which right now is crochetcryss.com. Right now, all that's on there are some show notes from a few of the episodes, but I intend to really add more content there. I honestly don't intend for YouTube to be like my main vehicle. I would really like for it to be my blog. So there will sometimes be overlap between the content that's on the blog and what I intend to talk about on my YouTube channel. So as far as my crochet goals, I think I've mentioned previously that it's just I want to make clothing, but specifically I want to build my crochet wardrobe. When I got that book, The Crochet Closet, which I think was a gift from my sister, maybe, I don't know. When I got that book, I was really fascinated by that idea of a crochet closet, fascinated with the idea of having enough things that you've made in your closet. There's a photo, I think it's on the back cover of the book, and it's just all the garments that are featured in that book, all the patterns that are featured in that book, hanging in a closet. And I love that image, and I've always thought I want my closet to look like that, to look more like that, to have more things that I've made in the closet. Once I went on a trip to the Knit and Crochet show. So the Knit Guild and the Crochet Guild used to do a show, an annual show together, where they had classes and things. But now the Crochet Guild is doing their own show. But I liked having the two events together because my family's mixed, crocheters and knitters, and we could all three of us take classes together. So I don't know, I'm hoping that the Knit Guild and the Crochet Guild will get back together at some point. We'll see. But I decided that when I went to that event, I would try to wear something that I crocheted every day. It was only I think maybe it was 4 days, 3 nights, I'm not sure. But I wanted to have a crochet garment as part of my outfit every day, and I was able to pull it off. And people would stop me and say, oh my gosh, what's this pattern, or did you make that? And I got a lot of compliments, and that was nice. But for me, it was just really exciting to have things that I made feel like, I'll say it, real clothes, to just be something that I took out of my suitcase each day and put on. And kind of I always think of my crochet as holding its own in a room full of store-bought garments, not in any sort of competitive type of way, but just in that I don't stand out as the person who's wearing something, that looks odd or strange just because it's something that I've made. And I really, I made a point of trying to wear things on that trip that weren't just shawls or what have you. I don't mean to speak disparagingly of shawls, but if you're wearing a shawl, you're still going to need a shirt on. So I made a top for each day of the trip, and it was really cool to be able to pull something out, like I said, of my suitcase every day and make an outfit with it. And I want to be able to do that and have that experience more. So the plan is to really focus on adding things to my wardrobe more often by crocheting them than I do by buying them. And there'll be certain basics that, I'm not going to try to crochet underwear. I'm going to buy store-bought underwear. I'm not going to try to make everything. I'm going to be realistic. I'm going to be practical. This is about enhancing my wardrobe, not replacing my existing wardrobe. But I want to, if I want a new shirt, I want my first thought to be, okay, what kind of shirt am I going to make? Not necessarily what will I buy. Car passing. So I'm trying to really focus on making clothes with an eye towards building my wardrobe, which means making things that complement my style and not just kind of like, you know, settling for things I think I can make. That said, my style is very simple. So you won't see like a lot of fancy color work, like, you know, the color work yoke sweaters, the tapestry crochet. That's not my deal, so you're not going to really see that from me. So I also talked about previously patterns, right? That I want to use patterns less because I felt like I had become what I'm going to call pattern dependent, which means before I could make anything, I would have to search for a pattern that would allow me to make that thing, to make a sweater, to make a top, to make a dress, to make a skirt. I always started with a pattern. And for me, that feels like a very slow way to do things. You have to find the pattern first, find a pattern that you like, find a pattern that you feel like it, you know, either it's something you can make, or the skills that are involved are something that you can learn readily enough to satisfy your urgent demand to make a thing, right? And then you have to find yarn in your stash that works with that pattern. I found that just since I have been working on the off-road sweater and kind of like giving myself permission to think beyond patterns, I find that it happens more and more that when I look at a yarn, I see what I want it to be. Like, oh, that's going to be this kind of sweater. That's going to be a boat neck sweater, or oh, this is going to be an LBD, you know, a little black dress or what have you. I feel like just by declaring that I want to use patterns less, I kind of like unlocked something that's given me a new way to look at my yarn. So I'm not going to the patterns first and then trying to find a yarn that fits the thing I want to make. Instead, I'm looking at my yarn and deciding what it's going to be and what I'm going to do with it, without having, you know, my design ideas like, you know, ordained by an existing designer or their patterns. So should I number these? Okay, so 1, we're building our wardrobe using crochet more so than shopping. I guess some people would call that part of like the slow fashion movement. I use air quotes a lot. Sorry about that. I don't know if this is like a movement or a lifestyle for me. It's just a goal. It's just a thing that I want to do. 2, I definitely want to reduce my pattern dependence so that I feel confident making things on my own without having step-by-step instructions in front of me. Because I feel like I'll be able to make things faster if I'm not always waiting to find the right pattern. The other thing is number 3, I guess. I want to be in control of my own learning. So when I started making things from patterns, my very specific goal was to learn how to make garments, so that each pattern I use, there would be some sort of takeaway from me that I could use going forward. Like, okay, now I know how to do this thing. I know how to make a top-down sweater, or I know how to do, you know, this kind of seam or what have you. Excuse me. And I guess I don't know, I felt like I'd kind of topped out in terms of like learning from the patterns I'd been using, because like I said, there were just certain things that like I wasn't interested in making based on, you know, the skills or the techniques that were used. So within, you know, the realm of patterns that I would bother to make anyway, I felt like I kind of maxed out with what I could learn from other people. And I think I talked about this a little bit when I did my my off-road sweater postmortem, that I saw where some of the holes were in my crochet education. For instance, knowing how to use my gauge swatch properly, or how to know ahead of time how much yarn I would need to make a specific thing. And I want to make sure to address some of those holes in my education and decide for myself, okay, this is the thing I need to learn now, and direct my efforts towards learning those specific things. I just want to be more in control of that process, because when you just look at the photo of something someone has made, you don't immediately know all of the techniques that were employed. So you don't know ahead of time, okay, you're going to get this skill and that and whatever. And so I want to just kind of take more charge of my own learning. And we're going to start wrapping this up because y'all, it's hot. Okay. 4, I guess, is confidence. I just wanted to build my confidence and know that, I don't know, I felt, I guess, like a little bit of a lopsided crocheter, because on the one hand, yeah, I could make these things, but I wasn't designing anything of my own. And I just felt like, for me, that was a part of the puzzle that was missing. So I want this process, because the off-road sweater was really like very stressful and frustrating for me. And I just want that process to feel less frustrating and less stressful, and to just be more fun, because I have more confidence doing it at the outset. When I decide, okay, I'm going to make this thing, instead of my first thought being, oh my God, how am I going to make this thing? I want my first thought to be like, okay, I think the first thing I need to do is this, and then I need to do this. I want to feel confident that I know that checklist of things that I need to do before I start making my next project. And so I really want to be able, so I'm reading my own handwriting, isn't that terrible? I wanted to be able to make more of what I see, meaning I don't want to have instructions in front of me for making this kind of sweater or pants. I really intend to make some crochet pants, and I don't want to need specific instructions for it. I want to be able to look at a garment, like specifically really look at a store-bought garment, to look at something I see in a store and figure out a way to make my own version of it. So I want to be a flexible and an adaptable crocheter, so that I can make more of what I see. Because sometimes, I will be honest, I go to a store and I see a sweater and I'm like, that's really cute, I could buy that sweater, but damn, I think I can make something like that. Like, why should I spend this money right now when I can make something like this, when I already have yarn at home and I wouldn't have to spend any more money? But by the time I get home from the store, you know, the bloom is off the rose a little bit, because I'm like, can I though? Can I really make this thing that I just, you know, caught a glimpse of in a store? And I want to be able to do that. Again, the focus will be on very simple things, but that's one of the things that I want to be able to say I can do as a crocheter, that I can just make what I see in front of me, some version of it. It doesn't have, I'm not trying to exactly duplicate anything, but to take the elements of something that I see that I like and figure out how to incorporate those elements into my own garment. And ideally, I don't know what number we're up to. I think this is 6. I would like to be making a season ahead. So I would like to be making my fall things in the summer, my winter things in the fall, so on and so forth. And that's just a function of me being more organized, knowing ahead of time what I want to make, have my sketches in place, have my design ideas worked out, to know what yarn I plan to use for things. I really would like to get to a point, because right now I'm just all over the place, like, oh, I want to figure out how to do this and I want to figure out how to do that, and I haven't really focused on just making to make, as opposed to still being in a space where I'm making to learn. So I want to get to that making to make place, so that what I'm actually doing is just building my wardrobe and doing that in an organized way, so that I'm actually a season ahead with my mates. Maybe even 2 seasons ahead, but we won't get crazy. So I hope somewhere in all of that mess of words, you all felt like you learned something about me as a maker, as a crocheter, and now you have a better idea of the kinds of things that I'm going to be talking about, because this is going to be a more, I'll just say it, talky podcast. It's not going to be me trotting out, 7 things that I've made since the last time you've seen me, because I will not have, the last 2 weeks since I finished the sweater, I've been working on 2 shawls that are going to be on display in the store, just, to show that yarn. And they're not what I want to be making right now. They're very, very, they're nice patterns, but they're very, very, very simple patterns. That's why I didn't even honestly bother to bring them out and show them because I'm not excited about them. That's not where I want to direct my energy right now, to just making, someone else's pattern and making something that I'll just say it, damn it, that I could make in my sleep. Just because the skills that I'm using here are things that I have done a million times already. So that's all I've worked on in the last 2 weeks. And I'm going to have periods of time like that. I'm going to have periods of time where I don't have a finished thing to show you, but hopefully the goal, the plan is to still have something interesting and worthwhile to talk about. So if you're interested in more of a special topics in crochet type podcast than like I said, an FO show, I'm hoping, and please, I'm not speaking about anyone specifically or like criticizing any other podcasters. The point is that everyone's doing this their own way, and I was trying to make myself do this the way I see other people doing it. That's all I'm saying by point of comparison. Some people tend to have a lot of finished objects in each of their podcasts, and I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm hoping that's okay. If not, it'll just be my mom, hi mom, watching this, and I'm fine with that, because this is really just an outlet for me, something that hopefully, at some point in the future I'll look back on and say, oh snap, look where I was and look where I am now. So it's definitely a journey, not a destination type of situation happening here, and I'm hoping some of you will stick around for that. In the meantime, happy 4th of July and stay stitching.